It's a Saturday afternoon in Brisbane, and three women are busily preparing for the launch of the first ever Sex, Love and Romance Gaming Symposium in Australia. Heartbeat is being launched by 6 women from all corners of the country and will see 60 participants come together in December to challenge and break the boundaries of love, sex and romance in video games.
Okay, so basically what we want to do is confirm how many speakers we want. So I think we went with 8.
Yes.
And have you emailed all the sponsors? How many do we have left?
We have 11 sponsors, haven't emailed them, haven't finished the draft.
So by the end of the day, if we could email at least half of those.
Yeah.
And I can do some of the speakers. Heartbeat is a 3-day symposium about love, sex and romance held in between the jungle and the ocean in Byron Bay. Essentially, we want to improve the dialogue on these themes in games, and we want to also challenge people to start thinking about how do we deliver an emotional experience such as people will get from film or from music through the medium of video games. Because right now in those games it's kind of awkward, or it's not very well expressed, or it uses techniques from cinema to deliver those emotional things. And video games is an interactive medium. I want to figure out how we can best use interactivity to communicate those stories. So our collective is really about how do we collate resources for people to do that? How do we inspire people and educate people through those resources? And then how do we challenge them to do something different? So that's through us creating our own prototypes of games is like an example of, try and don't be afraid to fail and let's actually start a dialogue on this. Putting together a collection of resources of games that we think are doing really well, academic articles that have been published, talks and people at the forefront of these issues, and then of course actually hosting events and getting people together and starting to formulate a community and say, hey, there's developers out here who are doing this, who are interested in it, and there's also an audience for it.
In a multi-billion-dollar industry where 90% of the workforce is made up by men, the representation of sexuality in video games is limited. Blushbox Collective plans to disrupt this status quo and challenge the representation of not only women and sexuality, but the lack of diverse characters presented in popular games.
There is a stigma associated with sexuality in the workplace, but fortunately in the millennial generation, I really think that is just being completely deconstructed right now, and I think we're investigating it in ways that we never have before, and I'm so on board with that. Like, I really want people to say, hey, sexuality is actually a huge part of who we are as a person, and why shouldn't we be making, video games about these topics? I mean, other creatives have been making games about sexuality for years.
The latest Digital Australia report, released in 2016, shows that 47% of gamers in Australia are women. However, only approximately 10% of women currently work in the video games industry. Jasmina Rosa Zito is one gender diversity campaigner who is hoping collectives like Blushbox will help increase the number of women working in the industry and decrease traditional portrayals of violence against women in popular games.
So right now, any games that we do have that explore these themes of love and sex and relationships, it's usually with women in a subordinate position. And a lot of the times it's violence against women. We see games like Grand Theft Auto where you can have sex with a prostitute, beat her up and take your money back. Not only that, but if you punch a female character, instead of crying or screaming, she says that she likes it rough. So there's interesting notions of sex versus violence in games at the moment. But I don't think it's too much to ask to just see, more games with diverse characters, more games with female characters as the lead, and they don't necessarily have to be tough and strong. They can be cutesy, they can be feminine, they can be, gender non-conforming. It doesn't matter. It just matters that we have a bit more diversity in the representation of characters, because I think if anyone can see themselves in a game character, that's what we all want.
Although forging the future of diversity and sexual representation in video games may be a large task, the women behind Blushbox Collective believe they can do it.
Yeah, definitely. Blushbox is the best vehicle for any of this because it's in Australia, which is amazing. And yeah, they're all amazing women doing this, so yeah.
There's such a powerful message and call to action that games can have because they have that interactive component. Yeah. And I think that, and truly feel that initiatives and collectives like Blushbox and our events like Heartbeat can really start to change that conversation.
I really want them to go away from this weekend thinking I can make games about sex, love and romance without fear of judgment from the industry, but also in a way that I never realised was possible.
Group photos. Group photos, we were all happy with how we look in them.
Yeah.